Welcome to Reach the World ASAP. My name is Pastor Scott Griswold, the Associate Director for ASAP Ministries. We're all very familiar with the parable of the sheep and the goats. You know the one about the least of these. But there is a phrase we always skip right over. It's hit me as very important, and I invite you to take a look with me. There in Matthew 25, right before the phrase, I was hungry and you gave me food, I was thirsty and you gave me drink, I was a stranger and you took me in. Let me start with verse 31 and go on to 32. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the holy angels with him, then he will sit on the thrones of his glory. And all the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them one from another, as a shepherd divides his sheep from the goats. Did you catch that? The nations will be gathered, and he will separate them. What does that mean? Will we somehow be judged by the nation we're a part of? Does the way Americans live and treat the least of these decide my judgment? Well, I looked it up in the original language. I'm not much of a Greek scholar, but the commentaries make it clear that the nations is a different gender from the words them one from another. That means God does gather us as nations, but will judge us individually by what we personally did with the hungry and the thirsty. So then why am I bringing it up? Because I'm feeling a bit goat-like, not as involved in caring for the poor as I used to be. I've been back from Southeast Asia, living in the USA for 4 years. I don't see many hungry and thirsty people. We're all pretty well fed where I live. I really do believe my country is impacting how I think about food and drink in the house I ought to be able to live in. I believe I will be gathered before God as an individual and as an American, and that I had better know what of my culture is seeping into me and changing me into maybe a goat. So explore with me for a moment a little bit of how we spend our money in America. Now, we may not feel rich, but the average income in America, putting both rich and poor together, is $51,000, whereas worldwide it's $9,000. Even more specifically, the average American makes $211 every day, and 3 out of 4 people spend it all 211 of it. Now contrast this to 50% of the world that has to live on what we spend on our average meal. 1 out of 2 people has to survive on $2.50 a day. And I mean survive. I don't spend much on water. The typical American spends about 0.1% of their income on water. But over in India, they have to spend 17% of their hard-earned money on water. In Ghana, it's 25%. In Madagascar, 45%. Half of what they make goes just to have the barest amount of water necessary to drink, to cook, to survive. And I can hardly believe it, but in the country of Cambodia, where I used to live, 50% of the people don't have access to clean water. And some actually, at times, spend more than 100% of their income on clean water, borrowing just to get some. How about food? Well, in Indonesia, it takes 43% of their income to keep rice on the table. That's about the same for places like Cameroon, Egypt, Pakistan, Belarus, and Kenya. How about us? We only spend 7% of our salaries on food. And that's even after we typically drop $2,625 every year on the more expensive way of eating out at restaurants. So if we're spending so little of what we make on food and water, where's it going? Well, we spend about 3% on clothing, about 5% on health, 8% on insurance, a whole lot on our cars, about 15%, and a quarter of everything we earn on housing. Oh yeah, one more chunk. About $2,482 a year just on entertainment. Now remember, I'm lumping us in with everybody else. That's because Jesus did in Matthew 25. Even if you don't perfectly match the lump, the point is to stop and to think how goat-like we have become in eating up the resources while others are hungry and thirsty. It obviously matters to Jesus how we spend our money. So what can we do? I mean, you have to sleep somewhere. You've got to wear something. You need to eat and drink to stay alive. So, okay, let's not think about those things. Put aside our expensive houses and food bills. But let's at least think about a few things we could really do without. How about we start with pet Halloween costumes? That shouldn't ruffle too many feathers. In America, we spent $310 million just on scary or not so scary pet costumes last October. A little closer to home, Christmas. Americans spent $465 billion on the happy holidays. Happy for us, not so happy for many around the world. Let's jump to sports. Just $500 million got whacked in golf balls. Throw that all together and $254 billion on professional sports in 1 year. What could we Americans live without? Well, we could drop the $10 billion spent for romance novels and the $17 billion we spend on video games. Think what we could do with that money. We could enter the greatest action-packed adventure of sharing the gospel of love to romance the unreached. Before we just glaze over with all these figures of millions and billions wasted, let's consider two last stats. America eats $16 billion worth of chocolate and guzzles $11 billion worth of coffee. Together, that almost reaches the amount that Dr. Diaz calculated would end world hunger. Yes, 30 billion is all it takes. To make sure that we actually have enough to take care of that, let's throw in what we spend yearly on soft drinks. 65 billion. That would more than care for any of the problems that the hungry and thirsty least of these have. So, America, are you feeling like a goat, nibbling up everything in sight? I don't want to bash America too hard. There are many, many generous people. The average person gives 2% of his or her income to some sort of charity. There are many individuals who sacrifice a lot, and you are likely one of those. But again, I'm asking myself and urging you to ask yourself how much of the sheepish, selfish goat has seeped into your skin. What are you wastefully eating, drinking, watching, doing that directly means someone else isn't eating, drinking, surviving, thriving? Let's make it this simple. Make a box in your house for the least of these. Put in it real things like food and clothes that you can share with a local shelter or a homeless person you meet. Throw in there also some money from something you denied yourself every week, maybe even every day. There's that awful, awesome word, deny. Awful because it goes against our selfish nature. Awesome because according to Titus 2:11 and 12, it's the grace of God that teaches us to deny ungodliness and worldly lust. Wow, that's powerful. Jesus poured out everything for us at the cross. He gave it all up so we could live. He will help us do the same with those in need. He will take our hearts and make them new and unselfish. So go without something you'd like and come home and put the money in the box. So once a month, collect your money and send it somewhere. I'm sure you have lots of charities asking you to give. Choose them well, but definitely choose them and do it. I love our ASAP's priceless gift catalog. It has a special combination of evangelism, education, sponsorship, humanitarian, the persecuted. You can find it online at asapministries.org. Today I'm feeling like a sheepish goat. By God's grace, I'm going to move into more of the sheep group who sacrifice like the Lamb of God. I hope you will too, so that together we can reach the world ASAP.